Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Thursday night Anamkara Meditation Foundation program. So good to see you and be with you. With all my heart, I welcome you to our program tonight. Thank you for bringing the fullness of your sublime self. You're an emanation of the infinite, an embodiment of the infinite. And so we get to gather together on these Thursday evenings in satsang, in the company of the truth, in the company of your sublime nature, your highest nature. And that's what sort of makes this such a unique and special kind of gathering. We just bring the fullness of that, revel in that through the practices. Now, the practices are really a way of us being able to dive into, set aside the mind and dive into this ocean of the infinite. And what's there? Boundless love, rapture, ecstasy, wisdom, compassion without measure, equanimity, a strength of peace and centeredness and steadiness that's unshakable. Who wouldn't want to go there? So that's what we get to do when we get together on Thursday evening. So thank you for coming and bringing the power of your practices and, again, your sublime self. So we're going to start with the opening mantras. Of course, the opening mantras are that way that we use for easing the mind aside. It's a very useful instrument, but it tends to dominate our experience. So we always have to say, okay, now you get to sit aside and quietly, you could even go to sleep. That's okay. Just going to be out of the way. And we use the power of mantra in order to help quiet it and shift our attention out of being so involved in the content of mind. Just as we did last week when we were doing the Heart Sutra, and that in that study of that, seeing how it's just neti, not this, not the eyes, nose, ears, nose, body, mind, nothing. None of those things are who you are. They're all ephemeral. Well, the opening mantras are an invitation to come back home to yourself, to rest there, and experience what unfolds in that sublime space of boundless awareness. So we'll start with the opening mantras. Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai Gajananam Bhutanganari Sevitam Kalpita Jumbo Palacharu Bhakshanam Umasutam Chokam Vinashakarakam Namami Vigneshwara Parapankajam Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamandaya Purnamevavashishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shri Mata Kali Devi Ki Jai. So once again, with all my heart, with all my love, I welcome you to our program this evening. And so this is the first Thursday in the month, so we get to talk more about some of the practices and philosophy behind what we offer in a sense of the Dharma talk. And I was thinking about it. One time, there was a great sage, and a great disciple came for the first time. And the student came, and he bowed to the master who was sitting there, and just sat in the stillness for a moment. And so the master looked at him and went, and the student got up and walked away enlightened. That was the teacher's Dharma talk. It was very powerful. And the student was very ripe. So what did that mean? Fear not. It's a Bhaya mudra. Fear not. So the master could see the ripeness of the student. Didn't need words. Fear not. Take this. What's this? The pointing finger. Pointing finger is also a symbol of the ego mind. Join it to the self. Tether it to the self, to the infinite, to the one. Turn that in. And then come to rest. In samadhi, in true knowing. It's really the summation of sadhana, of the path. Really, that kind of process is what we engage in over and over again. The mind likes a lot more details, so it wants to have a lot more information to fill in there. But eventually it comes down to not even that, to just entering the stillness and the silence. Because that's where all this arose from. So it arises from moment by moment. And so the practices are aimed at bringing us back to that truth. One of the practices we use a lot, of course, is mantra and sacred sound. In the ancient Vedas, it says, in the beginning was Brahman. Brahman is the absolute. With whom was the Word, and the Word was Brahman. It's very similar to what we see in the opening of the chapters of the Bible. So this truth was deeply known across traditions. That creation comes out of this spanda, this throb, this vibration of Shakti. Shakti is the power of consciousness that creates all of this. Kundalini Shakti is a name for its presence that sustains the body and the mind in its ordinary states, and at the right time awakens and opens the doors to the infinite once again. But it's all that Shakti. And what's the word that comes out? The word is Om. The word is Om. And so it's seeing that as described by the ancient sages and rishis, but directly knowable. See, these things, what's important is these are directly knowable. So this isn't just a theory. It's not just a philosophy. Philosophies in India are called darshanas. Darshana is a way of seeing. You see, and really the words are a description then of the direct experience of seeing. And so the non-dual, like in Kashmir Shaivism, as a darshan, as a philosophy, it's not just a set of concepts. It's at best a description of what the direct knowing unfolds and how that unfolds, what we experience in that. So Om is this throb of the infinite that becomes everything. And Om is also, in a sense, a map of states of consciousness. So Om is made up of 3 syllables, A, U, M, and the silence before, and the silence after. The silence. Interestingly, the silence is the key. It emerges as a sound, but what does it emerge from? Silence. What does it dissolve into? Silence. What is that silence? That silence is the bindu. It's the dot. You know, when you see the classic symbol of an Om in Sanskrit, there's a little like curved moon, half moon, and a dot. The moon is nada, this divine unstruck sound. The dot is the bindu. It's the portal. It's the portal out of which all comes and is manifest, and through which it all dissolves again. So the bindu is the great goddess, is the great mother. The bindu, that portal, is her womb, giving birth to the universe and absorbing it back into herself. The bindu, you know, that's what we see in the center of the Kali Yantra, the Mahakali Yantra. Same bindu, the dot. And so the practices invite us to go back into that. And so when we begin to both unfold directly the experience of mantra, then we can come to know what these ancient sages and rishis were talking about when they talked about how A, U, M, and the bindu, well, it corresponds to 4 bodies. It corresponds to 4 states of consciousness. So right in just this one syllable, Om, we have a map of the entire path of both creation and dissolution, of coming into being and dissolving back into universal being. From going from the infinite to the finite, and from the finite back into the infinite. All in that just one word, Om. And so the 4 states that it is representative of, or is an emanation of, it starts off in the state of the infinite, the state of what's also known as the supracausal body. Not a body. There's no definition. There's no form. That's a word used to try and point at it, not very accurately, but it's a way of talking about it as being above and beyond the causal body. And the causal body is also then the next stage in creation happening, going from the boundless, the infinite, the formless. In the causal body, we start to have the very subtle seeds of form being able to manifest. And out of the causal body springs the subtle body. Well, the subtle body we know because the subtle body is our mind. The subtle body, our experience of that most directly is in dream states, where we're not really identified with the body, but we're in this fluid state of consciousness. There's a limited I there and present, but the subtle body isn't bound by the physical universe and its laws. So in dreams we can go back and forth in time, we can have different shapes, all kinds of things can happen in dreams because the subtle body has that kind of fluidity to it. And it's seen as the subtle body is then what gives birth to the gross body, the physical body. And so it's from that that we're most ordinarily experiencing what it is to be alive. So when we look at the reverse, what mantra is inviting us to know. Mantra comes into this gross form as well, as sound, as thoughts, as written word. So mantra on that gross level is on the level of the gross body. Then when we're just attuning more and more to it, just in the state of the subtle body, then it's just the throb of the mantra in our consciousness. And that can then dissolve into a quietness, a stillness, where the word forms of the mantra disappear, and there's just a throb of awareness itself. And then that dissolves completely. And we're back into the state beyond words, beyond thoughts, beyond sounds, beyond all forms. And so that's what the vehicle of mantra that has arisen out of the infinite, has coalesced and taken grosser and grosser forms until it's perceptible by our ears and our gross mind. But it, emanating from the infinite, serves as a vehicle for going back into the infinite. And so the teachings on sound and creation, on the word is with Brahman, the absolute, is unfolding how this all occurs. And it's particularly important because it's, for us, doing sadhana, it's going, oh, that's how the vehicle of mantra can take us back to that state. It's an emanation of that. And when we talk about those four states of consciousness, those are also associated, as are the syllables in the mantra Om, with the four bodies: the gross physical body, the subtle body, the causal body, and then the supracausal body. The state of consciousness that goes with each of those bodies. The state of consciousness for the physical body is the waking state. The state of consciousness that goes with the subtle body is the dream state. The state of consciousness that goes with the causal body is the deep sleep state. Defined in yoga as the continuous awareness of nothingness. Just that black expanse of deep sleep. There's still a seed of limited eye awareness in there, but it's a sense of the void. Transcending that, we go into the supracausal, we go into the infinite, beyond any bodies. And so when we're then looking at, that process of creation coming from the infinite to the causal, why is it called causal? Because it causes everything that comes after that. The cause is the negation of the experience of our infinitude. That's what creates the blackout. It's like saying, okay, we're everything. We're all that is, all that could be, all that isn't, everything. This undifferentiated state of Shiva Shakti consciousness, pure bliss, pure ecstasy. And then sort of a subtle throb begins to happen. And in order for differentiation, in order for separation and differences to be known, that unity state has to be negated. The negation of that is this causal body, this state of the void. So when we're in that deep sleep, we've drawn very close in states of consciousness to our true nature. So the yogis looking at that said, well, this explains in part what happens at night. We're exhausted by all the things that the mind moves amongst the senses and the objects of senses all day long. And then finally, we get to sleep at night. And in order to go to sleep, what do we have to do? We have to let go of all the objects of sense, all the objects of thought. The mind is still active. It keeps us from falling asleep. So there's a letting go. There's another important component of understanding how do we really shift states. Well, it's by letting go. You can't do sleep. You let go and enter sleep. If you were conscious at the time of watching how you go from the dream state to the deep sleep state, that's another level of letting go. And so interestingly, Tolstoy, apparently who had heard of this in the Upanishads, he wrote a wonderful story about how there was a poor peasant who kept having dreams of great wealth buried. And finally the dreams developed, and he lived in this poor little hut with nothing but a dirt floor. But he started to have an image of the wealth being buried underneath a bridge that was near the palace of the Tsar. And he thought, oh, how can a person like I am, just a poor peasant, even approach them? I'd get arrested. They wouldn't let me near that. But finally he felt compelled to go there. And he crept and crept and crept in the dark as he got closer to the bridge. And there was a guard at the bridge. And there's this poor peasant, older fellow, rummaging around under the bridge, trying to find the treasure that he had dreamt of. Now the guard hears him and goes down and says, hey, you, what are you doing there? And the old man says, you won't believe this, but I've been having this dream for so many years that underneath this bridge I would find a treasure. So I came here just hoping that I might find that. And the guard was a compassionate fellow. And he said, you know, Father, I've been having a similar dream. Only my dream, I keep seeing a hut. And I see this little hut with nothing but a dirt floor. And buried under the dirt floor is an extraordinary treasure. Who can make anything of these dreams? Well, the old man thought, oh, could that be? So he traveled all the way back to his home and dug up his floor, and there was the treasure. So in the Upanishads, it talks about how every night as we go to sleep and enter that deep sleep state, we draw so close to the boundless wonders, the boundless treasures of our infinite being. But it takes the practices to help us cross that barrier and enter the self and know it directly for ourselves. And so that's what the practices are empowered to do. They keep bringing us back to that. And really it's seen that speech itself arises in these four stages as well. That there's the para, the highest level. Again, sort of the infinite, where the seed form of some idea, some manifestation begins, but is undifferentiated in that awareness. But as that throb begins to pulsate more with more energy, more shakti, more power, it begins to hit a level of speech that's called pashanti. It's still beyond the ordinary mind, but it's starting to coalesce into form. And that, in a sense, is like the causal body. And then it coalesces further and becomes just the seed form of an idea. And now we can think in those forms and symbols, words, ideas. And then it coalesces further and becomes gross speech, sound forms. And so it's looked at that this is occurring all the time. This movement from the infinite to the finite, from the infinite to the finite. But when we join mantra, we can make the passage the other way, from the finite back into the infinite. So that's why mantra was seen as such an extraordinary gift, to receive the power of mantra, a Chaitanya mantra, a conscious awakened mantra. And then takes us beyond the mind, where all that suffering that comes from limited identification and the pursuits of what the mind gives birth to come home to the self, to the boundless nature of our wisdom, our ecstatic, rapturous being, our boundless loving compassion, our steadiness of equanimity. All informed through these simple practices. If we can keep letting go, see, that's the key. It's letting go. It's letting go of the identification with this thought, letting go of the identification with this idea, this to-do list, this, I wish I had this, I wish I had less of that. All those things that the mind becomes involved with and identified with that bind it. So that's what we let go of. And literally cultivate, literally start to practice the identification with the infinite. So that's why we practice when we're doing mantra. We're practicing the awareness of I am that. The Hamsa awareness. I am that. So when we're practicing the mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, I bow to the infinite. I bow to the sublime one, the auspicious one, the self of all. But we do it with the awareness of I am that. Who's bowing? The mind. Is it bowing to your true self, your true nature? Soham, Hamsa, I am that. Saham, I am her. Saham. Ma, Om Kali Ma, Om Kali Ma. Shiva Shakti, we're both with that witness, unshakable, unperturbed, delighting in the dance of his divine partner, the Shakti. All he sees is the Shakti as his own self. Play of creation unfolding before him until they merge again. And that's unspeakable. That state is unspeakable. That love is unspeakable. It's that love that draws us. It's the joy that draws us. As interesting as philosophies and ideas and descriptions can be, especially for the mind thinks when it has a concept, it has the thing. No, it doesn't. To have yourself, you don't need any concepts. Any concept, in the end, will be an obstacle. So Meister Eckhart said, the last obstacle to God is God. What he meant was the concept, the thought of a God is in the way of knowing. And we only know by dissolving into that, by having let go of all sense of individuality, all sense of limitation. To let go into that, to dissolve into that. That's what we're invited to do. That's what the practices invite us to do. That's what all the sages and saints across traditions keep talking about. Come home to that that rapturous, loving embrace of the infinite, to know that moment by moment. See, the states of consciousness that we're familiar with, the waking, the dream, the deep sleep state, they're discontinuous. If you're in the waking state, you're not in the dream state. If you're in the dream state, you're not in the deep sleep state. The state of meditation, the true state of meditation, is the state of the infinite. And it subsumes and transcends the three states that go with mind and body. Those three states, waking, dream, and deep sleep, are states of mind and body. The state of yourself is this rapturous union of it all. That's what we're invited to know. And then the light of that knowing illumines our mind, dispels the ignorance that can drive us to act in ways that do violence to ourselves and others, that cause suffering for ourselves and others. So letting go and letting go. We let go into that. So that state of consciousness, of meditation, that's a state then that the practices, because the practices we do are ways of attuning our consciousness to this pre-existing, continuously existing, always present state. And it's why, interestingly, in the physiological and neurophysiological research on advanced meditators, what they'll see is in the states of meditation, the habituation response, that's the response of the brain to things that are continuously present and not threatening. Well, the brain, because it has limited resources of attention and wants to pursue things that are moving, interesting, might be interesting to have to do with fight, flight, freeze, mate, eat, these fundamental processes of the body. The mind and the brain conserve attentional resources to be directed to that. So things that are continuously present and non-threatening, it goes, oh, I don't have to attend to that. That could be the pants we're wearing, the shirt we're wearing, jewelry we're wearing, the ticking of a clock that disappears. All these things fall out of consciousness, and you can see the shift in the EEG that it no longer is attending to, say, the click of a clock. Now, very interestingly, the yogis and the meditators that research was done on, they were able to bypass the habituation response and either be continuously aware, and you would see it in their EEG of a tick, a click done over and over and over again. They wouldn't habituate. Another interesting finding was even when they were non-reactive, they were still aware. So research that showed that a yogi in a deep state of meditation could be aware of what was going on in the room, the EEG didn't show reactivity. Awareness isn't just the firing of neurons. Consciousness goes beyond the body and the brain. And again, that's what the practices invite us to know directly, that we have this capacity, that consciousness survives death itself. And so the practices in many ways were also seen as a preparation for death in the yogic tradition, because they saw sadhana and the spiritual evolution that occurs through the practices done over and over, that can take lifetimes. So it's across lifetimes that also the power of the practices have an impact on our consciousness. So all this is directly knowable in the depths of meditation, in the stillness, beyond the mind. So when we're getting engaged and dissolving into mantra, and we're going to in a few moments be chanting Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, with the awareness of I am that. I am the auspicious one. I am the infinite. That's what the mind is cultivating as it does that. And letting go and letting go and letting go. To experience that consciousness that it's already fully present. That's watching. That eternal witness. The seer who's never seen. The hearer who's never heard. That one is yourself. That one is already in meditation. That one holds everything about you in its divine embrace. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. So we're going to be chanting Om Namah Shivaya now. And then just rest in the stillness of meditation. The stillness of your own sublime self. Kali Mahadevi Ki Jai. So we end with this prayer. And may all our practices truly benefit everyone. And may all beings know complete freedom from suffering. Namaste. So letting go and letting go. Letting go into the stillness. Letting go of the mind. Letting go of the states of the mind. To settle into the boundlessness. The boundless nature of simply being. In all its fullness. All its sublime, sublime fullness. The boundless love. The boundless wisdom. The boundless equanimity. The boundless joy. To come to rest in that, even for a moment. Even for a moment, transforms us. Even drawing near it in the unconsciousness of deep sleep rejuvenates us. We wake up, we haven't done anything, consumed anything, and yet we can feel so refreshed and alive as from drawing so close to the truth of who we are. So through the practices, we dissolve into that truth. And then it illuminates everything about us. And we see it illuminating the entire world. The consciousness that even allows us to perceive differences, limitations, perceive the mind, perceive others where no other exists. That too is Shakti. It's pure consciousness. Creating that, delighting in that, dissolving it, bringing it back. So keep coming back to the truth of who you are. To get free of the play and be able to see it as a play. And then we can play our part fully, completely. The part of walking wisdom, love, compassion, equanimity, carrying the grace and the infinite into the moment. That's what we're given to do. That's how we serve. So thank you for bringing the fullness of yourself this evening, the power of your intention and commitment to practices, and to walking that into the world so that we can do that together. Thank you for being you and living this in the ways that you live it into the world. So thank you. And thank you for the many ways that you all support Anamkara and share our offerings to people and support us with donations. With all my heart, I appreciate that. Thank you. So now we close for the evening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.